Dan and Amy and National Donut Day. Amy, why don't you scramble together a few bucks, maybe take a collection from everybody at the studio and
Yeah, hey, Toots, why don't you go out and go to some donuts, huh?
No, not us. No, let's be selfless on National Donut Day. Why don't you get a couple of dozen Benoits and deliver them over to Jelly Belly as sort of a peace offering to reconcile?
Oh, right, yeah, because, he might be leaving soon. Gave that announcement. No, well, you don't think it's true. I think there might be trouble at home. Can I just tell you? Just Craig Wall, real quick. Craig Wall from ABC7 got called yesterday. I don't know why they chose him to get an interview one-on-one with Pritzker, Governor Pritzker at the Thompson Center. They talked about, what this building's going to be used for. And then he slipped in that he might not run for office, folks.
It's a long decision process. This is a hard job. It takes you away from your family quite a lot. That is part of the job that I haven't enjoyed, is being away from my kids, and my wife.
Yeah, my kids, and my wife.
All right, get a dozen Benoits for MK as well as JB.
Trouble at home?
Please, stop.
Well, I mean, come on. You think this is a joke? This is a publicity stunt?
I mean, have you been in Chicago for 5 minutes? Have you been around politics for 5 minutes? This is a pathetic attempt to humanize him and get, oh, no, you got to do it. And he put $35 million into his reelection campaign already, and he's really wrestling with this. This is his whole identity. This is his singular accomplishment as a human being. This is the sash that he wears around. He's running for reelection. So just stop with the silliness and the Chicago press corps promulgating his press releases. Come on.
It wasn't a press release. It was like a secret one-on-one, and then Craig didn't even follow up with any hard questions. It was such a fluff piece.
Yawn. And what else is new? And the sun sets in the west again tonight. It is also May jobs report day, and the numbers are in 559,000, a little below estimates of 675,000. Unemployment rate drops to 5.8%, but still well above the under 4% it was pre-pandemic. A sign of reopening, but are we reopening fast enough? For more on this, somebody who also loves a good Benoit. That is, or Benet, or Benoit. I'm confusing Benet with a former forward for the Utah Jazz, which a lot of people do. Pleased to be joined by Scott the Cow Guy Shellady, Fox Business contributor. Scott.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pritzker calls 3 dozen donuts, right?
A good start.
Breakfast.
Oh, you guys are.
A good start.
Scott, enough with your fat phobia.
Cheap shots, yeah.
Yeah, right. It's outrageous. The May jobs report.
Never buying this glass house.
The 559, we're reopening, but are we reopening fast enough?
25 states are. We've got 25 red states that are dropping this pandemic top up, which those states have the lowest unemployment rates, and the ones that aren't doing it, the highest unemployment rates. Yes, we had 559,000 jobs given back. I'm not going to say created. They were given back because they were stolen in March. I can't stand that word, we created. And we're still way behind where we were as far as when we went into the pandemic. So we've got some jobs to make up, almost 7 million jobs still. So yeah, we're we're on the right track. Everybody still wants to talk about this inflation issue. The wages came in a little hotter. The unemployment rate did drop to 5.8, and the participation rate also dropped. So less workers. A lot of folks are trying to blame that on baby boomers retiring. I can see that. I would tend to lean that way as well. But then that means you're shrinking your labor force, which means you're going to see inflationary pressures when it comes to wages, and as well, you're paying people to stay at home. So America's, small businesses, I just feel so bad because, they were really hit hard by obviously having to shut down, and they don't have the balance sheets to to survive a year-long closure, number one. But number two, now they've got the government competing for their employees and winning. And number three is that there's this inflation euphoria, so a lot of the things that they need to buy for their businesses are going through the roof, and sometimes doubling in price, and so they're getting killed on all ends, and they're just in the middle, and it's so sad to see that. And I don't know if the government really cares about it that much right now. They don't care about the wage inflation because they're passive aggressive and they don't want to be seen to be raising everything to $15 an hour. So they'll sit on their hands and wait till private business does it because they're so desperate and say, we didn't do it, private business did it, just like the vaccine passport. They won't mandate anything on that. They'll wait till private business does it so they can say, we didn't do it, private business did it. So we don't have any leadership. It's all passive aggressive, and we're just rudderless. And I think these numbers, while they're not, they're not too hot, they're not too cold. The market seems to be liking them this morning. But I tell you, we've got an issue about whether or not we have inflation or we just have, reopening euphoria. And I've been on the tour talking about it a lot, and I don't have a lot of people in my camp on this at all whatsoever. I say, yes, they threw a lot of money at the pandemic, and they had to because they made people stay home. But these people needed to eat and they needed to pay rent. I don't think a ton of that money went into the stock market or inflationary items, right? I think a lot of people used it, business and personal. But we also have this issue where we have a demand. Everybody hit the demands. We're reopening. So demand is instantaneous. I want it now, okay? Well, these supply chains were shut down sometimes due to, so you got to think that that's a conveyor belt of goods and services coming off that conveyor belt. And back when everything was running right, when we had all the planes, trains, trucks, and boats in the right places, that was no big deal. But now when you want a refrigerator, there's nothing coming off of the conveyor belt. They have to make it for you now. It's like 10 weeks, and then they have to send it to you. And so if there are any refrigerators around, people are paying through the roof to get them. Is that inflationary? If the government had you shut down for a year and allowed you to reopen this Friday night at 6 o'clock and you could seat 150 people and 150 people showed up and all ordered at once, is that inflationary? I mean, we're getting confused whether this is an event or a trend, and the government's going to treat it as a trend because they want to tax it. I'm saying I think this is just an event, and we have to wait another 2 quarters to kind of let things kind of settle out, and you'll start to see it. I think stuff's already kind of coming off the boil. You started to see construction stuff kind of come down and new houses come down in numbers. And I think slowly but surely that'll be the case as we reopen and the euphoria goes away. So the government's got to be very careful. And I think that's what the Fed's doing here. They don't want to raise interest rates too quickly to kind of shut down this inflationary surge that they may or may not be seeing. Because I think that the Fed's kind of, and this is where I'm worried, I can kind of agree with what the Fed's doing right now. They're going to wait and see, because if they raise them too early, and this just was an event, which I think it was, not a trend, and Biden gets some of his tax hikes through, and we slip back down to our normal GDP of 2.5%, that could cause a big problem.
So then your suggestion, if I'm interpreting this right, is to say, look, because of these supply chain bottlenecks, you're not going to, and the fact we're not going to get back to full employment until the goodies run out in the fall. Sit back and wait until the private sector relieves these bottlenecks in supply chains and people are back to work, and then you'll see that inflationary pressure reduced.
Yeah, because yes, that's where I'll put my chips on that square, because the world is acting like we created a new technology over the pandemic that I'm not aware of. I mean, everybody's talking about how hot and how on fire everything is. Number one, no one on this earth has seen a $28 trillion economy, first of all, shut down and then restarted. So these economists are trying to judge it against these old metrics. We better have rip your face off numbers, because we're starting the biggest, best economy of all time. So these things better be out of the park. We're not creating anything. I hate that number, but we're getting back to normal. And that's my issue, is that we're acting like we created a new technology and it's 1999 again, and we didn't. I mean, who would have thought April 2020, a year ago, last April, would have been the best time to buy a house? I have vivid memories of sitting around the table talking to guys like, "Thank God I don't have any real estate. I'm not long real estate." So it's perverse. That's what I'm trying to say. It's perverse. So it's more euphoria. Go ahead.
So is a good example of what you're describing the issue with microchips in the car industry.
I had a guy sitting in my office in January of this year saying that we're going to have a problem with microchips. And I said, why? He says, I consult for the big 4 automakers in the country, and I'm telling you right now, there's the microchips, that conveyor belt stopped.
Right.
Just like the conveyor belt of rental cars stopped. Actually, what worked, they actually sold them all. Okay, so the conveyor belt stopped for microchips, and when the conveyor belt started to heat back up again, this consultant said to me in January, the microchips in this world 80% of them go to Silicon Valley, 10% go to automakers. So if you're a microchip guy, who are you going to keep happy? 80% of your customer base or 10?
Right, and so microchips are going to Nintendo products rather than cars, and with Taiwan Semiconductor basically being the monopolist in this, or certainly dominating the market. Now you're talking about restarting that, and microchips turn out to be complicated things that have long lead time, and then, as you said, supply chain has long lead times, and so it's a matter of months.
The unintended consequences of shutting down an economy of this size will have ramifications for the next 10 to 20 years. I'm just telling you right now, because we have to get, again, just think about those big container ships out there. We have to get all those ships in the right, in a small manner, when we used to shut down O'Hare because of snowstorms, shutting it down at night was a bad deal, right? But that was a pain in the butt. But really what was the bigger pain in the butt was in the morning, those planes weren't in the places they were supposed to be for the next day.
Yep.
That's what we're dealing with on a global scale. And it's going to take a little while for all of those conveyor belts and all of those planes, trains, ships, and trucks to get to where they need, and we start having that stuff kind of smooth out. And I think that's another 6 months away, maybe 2 quarters. But right now, because you can't get that microchip, and if you can, you pay through the nose for it, is that inflationary? I don't think, I wouldn't build a business plan off of that, okay? So that's why my eyes are telling me something that the rest of the world is not seeing, or at least I'm wondering, how can you call it inflation when we just have a short-term supply problem? Yeah. Now, yes, everybody's looking at the amount of money that they're throwing at this economy as far as, unemployment and PPP and all those things. And that could lead to a small uptick in inflation. I'll give the people that. I understand that. I can see that. But where's the inflation issue with refrigerators? Or, you can't get anything for your house. You can't buy sofas right now.
No, or air conditioning units. I'm having a hard time getting an AC because the parts aren't there. And then it went up because there's so few of parts that now you almost could pay double of what you're going to pay.
So everybody got their stimulus checks and they ran out and bought air conditioners. No.
Exactly. So
that's why I'm saying you got to slow your roll here and let this kind of work out. And then if it is inflationary, raise rates in 6 months' time. But you also have to worry about what the taxes might look like, down that road. So I think the Fed, I hate to say it, but I kind of agree with them right now.
All right. Well, you had mentioned, that, these weren't, create jobs that were created. There were jobs that were given back. Were there any jobs that were created?
No, I don't. No, even worse, I think we saw construction jobs went down in this report. So there are some things that are coming off the boil. The only thing that isn't coming off the boil, our wages are increasing, but I think that's because we've got this passive-aggressive leadership that wants to be able to blame it on small business doing it on their own, not from a government mandate of $15 an hour. And so when that starts to come up, that's going to go away in September. 25 states are getting rid of it, have gotten rid of it already. And perversely enough, the 25 states that did it have the lowest unemployment rates, which is just amazing. But I think that it's going to take that time to get these things back in order. And remember, some of these supply chains not only were just shut down because of no business, but a lot of them got shut down because no business, and they had a lot of people got sick and they had to send them home. They had big problems. So I want the world to kind of be greased a little longer before I'm going to call this inflation, because I still think, look, why do you think housing went through the roof? What happened? What changed in this world? Well, it's because I think we had a one-off exodus from big cities.
Right.
And the massive knock-on effect from that makes lumber go through the roof 300%. It's to me, it doesn't sound right. So that's why I say, if it doesn't sound right to me, or it's not commonsensical, I just want to slow my roll before I start making long-term decisions on a short-term problem.
How concerned are you about the Juan's appreciation against the dollar?
I'm not as concerned about that as I am about this economy being restarted right now. I think is very vulnerable. And I'm much, much, much more concerned about these cyber attacks than anything else right now. I've been writing about it for about 2 weeks, but ever since that Colonial shutdown we had, that was, look, they came after our fuel. They came now after our food. Now, they're going to keep coming. This is going to happen again. And I cannot imagine we've got our government now debating whether daycare and babysitting is infrastructure when behind them Rome is burning and they're not even noticing. Because if you want to keep with the alliteration with, food and fuel, what about flights and finance? What if they come after our air traffic control, or what if they come after our ATMs? Nobody can get any cash out.
Well, I'm willing to go to war over not getting my bacon for breakfast. There's no question about that. But
I think that's a huge issue. Huge.
What about the huge spending that continues? Right now, you have the UK and others in the EU starting discussions about exiting from their pandemic modern monetary policy and fiscal policies, whereas obviously the Biden administration, as we know, is looking at trillions more.
Well, that's going to be inflationary. That's what people are still talking about. And I think it's absolutely something that needs to be taken very seriously. And I am kind of worried about it, too. I think the way that we're spending money right now, and I was worried about it last year, too, is the fact, what if we have another pandemic? And now that seems pretty far-fetched, right? But now that I'm reading all these Fauci emails and seeing how this actually happened, I mean, this could happen again. And now that we've bankrupted our country and other countries are bankrupting themselves to try to get out of this, we don't have any more money to have this happen again in the next 100 years. That's another big concern. What are we going to do? We won't be able to shut down. I mean, what are people going to do? So
you're going to run to a red state.
The answer to pandemics is not spending, but the government thinks it is, or it's a great excuse to spend. And that does concern me. And I think that with what we've got that $6 trillion budget that they released on Friday is fantasy land. It's laughable. But they're going to use this for any reason and we're spending more money than we did in World War II. I mean, what people, when they really put it in a frame of reference, this is historic spending, which should make you quake in your boots. But I'm not quite sure you'll get a lot of it through. But regardless, we're going to get a lot of spending through, and we're going to get a lot of taxes through. And what's that going to do to your economy?
He is Scott the Cow Guy, Shellady, Fox Business contributor. Scott, thanks as always.
See ya. Thank you.
Have a great weekend. And he joined us on our turnkey .pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Dennis Prager along with fellow host Mike Gallagher. We both want to invite you to join us for the trip of a lifetime to the Holy Land this October. I personally can't get enough of the great state of Israel and its historical significance. Join us to be amazed and inspired.
Dennis and I have planned out every minute of this trip in detail with Salem Media Group and our trusted travel partner, Inspiration Cruises and Tours. You'll have the best experience imaginable. We're confident by October our trip will be safe, so register today worry-free until July 6th with no cancellation fees.
We'll sail on the Sea of Galilee in boats that are replicas of the ones Jesus sailed in with his disciples. Experience unforgettable cuisine and join us for an authentic Sabbath service.
It's something you'll never forget.